The air in the Daeju Orbital Shipyard control room was cool and smelled of recycled oxygen and warm electronics. Jin wiped a thin sheen of sweat from her brow, her eyes fixed on the massive holographic schematic floating in the center of the room. It showed the skeletal frame of the EDF Jeju, Earth's newest and most secretive defense frigate. Her section was the primary weapon array, a series of thick, magnetic coils that ran a quarter of the ship's length. Coil alignment is .999, she said into her headset, her voice calm. Final diagnostic cycle initiating. Outside the thick viewport and the silent blackness, a swarm of engineers in powered exosuits made microscopic adjustments to the great gray barrel. It didn't look like much. No glowing energy projector, no hum of contained plasma. It was just a tube of reinforced composite and superconducting metal. That was the point dot for 30 years. Humanity had listened to the stars. They had decoded the first hailing frequencies, built translators, and sent their own messages of peace and curiosity. The reply from the Galactic Council had been polite. They acknowledged humanity's spirited climb, but deemed their technology fundamentally incompatible with the galactic community. The Council's ships used phased energy shields and plasma cannons. Humanity's chemical rockets and nuclear missiles were, they said, like throwing rocks at a force field. They were granted the status of a protected observation species, a fancy term for being quarantined in their own solar system. Human pride had been wounded, then hardened. If energy weapons were the door, and they were locked out, they would find a window. A very fast, very heavy window. Research shifted, quietly and with grim focus, to kinetic impactors and the electromagnetic railguns to launch them. Jin's grandfather had worked on the first prototypes. Now she was bolting the final piece onto a warship. Diagnostics green, a voice crackled in her ear. It was Min, from his dark analyst's pit at Korean Space Command back on Earth. Power coupling is nominal. The Jeju is a go for live trials, pending command approval. Jin allowed herself a small smile. Copy that, Min. It's ready. She didn't know Min's face, only his voice, steady and precise, a constant in her ear for the last 2 years of the project. He was her link to the tactical data. The numbers that proved their work wasn't just an engineering exercise. He was the one who had first shown her the simulations. A tungsten rod, no bigger than a person, accelerated to 3% of light speed, striking a theoretical council shield. The shield didn't overload or buckle. It was simply punched through the way a bullet goes through paper. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At that moment, Min was staring at a different screen. Deep in the bunkers of the Korean Space Command, his monitor displayed the shimmering curtain of the Kuiper Belt, a grainy feed from the long-range sensor array at Pluto. A tiny, persistent ghost of a gravitational shadow had appeared for the 17th time in the same sector. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. The profile matched the faint, almost mythical signatures the few human deep space probes had associated with Council cloaking technology. "It's back," he muttered, tagging the anomaly and running it through the verification protocols. The system chimed its agreement. 94% probability of artificial origin. This was his third formal report. The first 2 had been sent through diplomatic channels to the Earth Unified Government's Alien Liaison Office, who had forwarded them to the Galactic Council's representative. He opened a new communication log. Report Alpha 79er. Anomaly confirmed, Sector Theta 7. Pattern suggests a cloaked reconnaissance vessel on a periodic survey orbit. Recommend a diplomatic inquiry to the Galactic Council to confirm intent and ensure adherence to the observation treaty. He sent it. It would be hours before he got any response. And he already knew what it would be. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk on the lush, artificial world of Xylos. In a chamber that seemed grown from crystal and light, Counselor Valen preened the iridescent blue feather on his forearm. The report from the humans blinked on his personal data slate. He let out a soft, chittering laugh, a sound like pebbles rolling. Again? He said to his aide, a diminutive being with large, dark eyes. The humans and their sensor ghosts. They stare into the dark so long they see monsters in stellar dust. His aide hesitated. The coordinates are consistent, Counselor. Perhaps a single, low-level sweep to see what? Valen interrupted. Their quaint orbital habitats? Their primitive fission-powered planet hoppers? They are children playing with signal fires, afraid of the shadows they themselves cast. Their technology cannot even detect our standard cloak, let alone pierce it. Mark the report. Resolved. Instrument error. Send the standard reply about enhancing their sensor calibration. He dismissed the notification. The idea that the Council's First Fleet, the pride of 1,000 worlds, had anything to fear from this backwater species was absurd. Their greatest weapon was a railgun, a magnetic slingshot. It was a tool for mining asteroids, not warfare. The Council's energy shields could deflect gigawatts of focused plasma. A lump of metal, no matter how fast, would simply vaporize against that wall of light. A pretty firework for their primitive telescopes. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Back on the Jeju, Jin was running a final hands-on check. She floated in the zero-G of the main launch tube, her gloves running over the smooth, cold interior of the rail. The silence here was profound. This was the heart of the weapon. When it fired, there would be no roar of chemical explosion, only a deep, subsonic thump through the ship's frame as the projectile was magnetically kicked into the void. The slug would leave the barrel at a speed that made it invisible to the naked eye. By the time an enemy's light-based sensors saw the muzzle flash, the projectile would already be inside their ship, that her wrist-cum buzzed. It was a news feed from Earth. The headline scrolled, Galactic Council reaffirms human developmental status. Trade talks postponed indefinitely. There was a snippet of an interview with a tired-looking human diplomat. The subtext was clear. They were still being patted on the head and told to sit in the corner. Jin pushed off the wall, floating back towards the access hatch. Her frustration was a cold, hard knot in her stomach. They had the answer. They had the Jeju, and 7 other ships like her being finished in hidden yards around the solar system. They had the railguns. But the Council wouldn't look. They only saw what they expected to see. She met the Jeju's lead test pilot, in the narrow corridor. He was checking a panel of navigational data. How's the baby? He asked, nodding toward the launch tube. Ready, Jin said. She doesn't look like much, does she? Day grinned, a flash of white in his lean face. That's what everyone will think. Right up until the moment they realize they should have been looking at the bullet, not the gun. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Min's response from the liaison office came in. It was a single line, appended to his report. Council acknowledgement received. Note states, anomaly unconfirmed. Recommend terrestrial sensor maintenance. He leaned back in his chair, the glow of the screens reflecting in his glasses. The ghost signal on his monitor continued its slow, predictable path, a silent observer in the dark. They were watching, and the Council was willfully, arrogantly blind. He thought of Jin's railgun, now sitting fully assembled in the void. He thought of the equations of kinetic energy. Force equals mass times acceleration squared. A very simple, very basic law of physics. The galaxy, it seemed, had forgotten how to do the math. The silence of the Martian communications array was a physical thing, broken only by the low hum of machines and the faint, constant hiss of the stellar background. Hana sat in her padded chair, a headset over her close-cropped hair, monitoring 1,000 empty frequencies. Her job on the Tharsis relay station was, by design, oaring. She listened for the chatter of human ships, the ping of automated probes, and the endless, meaningless noise of space. The Galactic Council had given them the listening protocols, and humanity used them diligently, hoping to hear something more. Today, the boredom was different. It had an edge. The news from the diplomatic corps about the Council's continued dismissal had spread through the system. A simmering resentment had settled over the outposts and ships. They were being treated like infants in a playpen. A sharp digital warble cut through the static. Hannah straightened up, her fingers flying across the console. It was a transponder code, but not one from the human registry. It was weak and garbled, bleeding across frequencies in a way that suggested primitive, broad-spectrum broadcasting. Tharsis Relay, this is unregistered vessel on approach vector to Mars orbit. Do you copy? I say again, this is... The voice that followed was translated by her software, but it was choppy, layered with strange harmonics. She opened a channel. Unidentified vessel, this is Tharsis Relay. You are broadcasting on a protected traffic lane. Identify yourself and state your purpose. A pause, then a burst of cheerful, translated speech. Ah, a human. Good. This is Grix of the Far Star Barter. I am a free trader. I have heard interesting things about your handcrafted goods. I seek to trade. I have Thessalian glow crystals. Very popular. Hannah's eyes widened. A trader? Council protocols were clear. All first contact or unauthorized entries were to be reported immediately to Earth Command, and, through them, to the Galactic Council. But the Council had made their disinterest plain. She felt a spark of defiance. Here was a real live galactic citizen coming to them. Grix, you are not on the approved approach schedule. You must hold your position. I need to contact my superiors. Hold? Nonsense. My shields are strong. I will be polite. I come in peace with glittering things. On her screen, a small, bulbous ship resolved from the sensor noise. It was heading straight for the Martian orbital lane, ignoring the automated warning beacons. Hannah slammed the emergency alert, sending the data to Earth and to the nearest patrol vessel. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. That patrol vessel was the EDF Jeju. It was on a routine shakedown cruise in the asteroid belt when the alert from Tharsis flashed on the main bridge viewer. Commander Yu, a woman with a stern face and calm eyes, studied the feed. Day, at the helm, glanced back. A trader? That's new. Too new, you said. And ignoring hails. Hannah says it's still coming. Plot an intercept course. Minimal burn. Let's not look aggressive. The Jeju turned, its engines a soft blue glow. On the engineering deck, Jin felt the slight shift in gravity and called up the tactical feed on her station. Her stomach tightened. This was it. Not a drill, not a test. An unknown contact. Back on Earth, Min saw the alert cascade into his network. He pulled up the Far Star Barter's profile from the scant galactic database. It was an old Secreti-class barge, known for being sturdy and slow. Its shields were a basic commercial model, designed to deflect micro-debris, not weapons fire. He sent a priority message to the Jeju. Vessel is likely independent, not Council-affiliated. Shields are low yield, Generation 3. Extreme caution advised. Asterisk, 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 the Jeju slid into a parallel course with the trader as it neared Mars. On the bridge, Yu opened a direct channel. Vessel Far Star Barter. This is the Earth Defense Frigate Jeju. You are in violation of controlled space. Cut your engines and prepare for a remote scan. Grix's translated voice came back, slightly annoyed. So many rules. I am a simple businessman. I will scan you first, yes? A courtesy. A visible pulse of green light washed over the Jeju from the trader's hull. A standard active scan. To the crew, it was harmless, but it was also a deeply provocative act. On a council ship, it would be a prelude to combat. Yu's jaw tightened. Do not scan this vessel. This is your final warning. Hold position. I see no weapons of note on your ship, Grix chirped, misreading the silence. Only some funny long tubes. Very primitive. I am coming closer. Let us talk face to face on your screen. The trader's engines glowed again, and it began a slow, lumbering turn, bringing its broadside towards the Jeju. On the Jeju's threat board, a low-level energy spike appeared. The trader was powering its single, outdated plasma cutter, a tool for slicing salvage, but still a weapon. Commander, Day said, his voice tense. He's charging a plasma emitter. Accidental discharge? It doesn't matter, you said. The rules of engagement were clear. A powered weapon on a non-compliant vessel was a threat. Target his engine block only. Single railgun shot. Warning shot across the bow is useless in space. We hit where it won't kill him. The order came down to engineering. Jin's hands trembled only for a second before she locked them into the firing controls. Target locked. Coil 1, single solid slug. Low yield. Fire. Commander Yu said. There was no beam of light, no roar. A deep, resonant THUMP echoed through the Jeju's frame, felt in the bones more than heard. In the void, a 20-kilogram tungsten slug, invisible to the naked eye, shot from the forward railgun. On the bridge viewer, they watched. The slug covered the distance in a blink. It did not hit the engine block. At the last millisecond, Grix, panicking, had tried to turn. The slug struck the rear quarter of the trader's hull, just beside the engine nacelle. The effect was nothing like the simulations of plasma impacts. There was no splash of superheated gas, no flare of shield interaction. The outer hull simply ceased to exist in a perfect circular tunnel. The slug, merely slowed, punched through 3 interior bulkheads, through a cargo hold of glittering crystals, and out the other side of the ship, spinning off into space. The violence was over in a fraction of a second, leaving a neat, horrifying hole. The far starboarder shuddered violently. Its engine glow died. The power spike from its weapon cutter vanished. Alarms wailed over the open coms, untranslated screeches of panic. Then silence, broken only by the hiss of escaping atmosphere. Hail them, Yu whispered, her face pale. They opened the channel. Far starboarder, do you require assistance? Repeat, do you require assistance? A long pause, and Grix's voice, weak and full of static. Human vessel, my ship is broken. The hole. The shield did nothing. What did you fire? What was that? Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next 24 hours were a blur of activity. The Jeju deployed damage control teams to seal the trader's hull. No lives were lost, but the shock was profound. Hannah, listening from Mars, heard the raw fear in the alien's voice and felt her defiance turn to cold dread. A full report, with sensor logs and Grix's testimony, was compiled and sent. Not just to Earth Command, but directly and with unprecedented transparency to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Lee himself attached a note. This was an unfortunate accident with an unannounced vessel. Our weapon's kinetic nature was underestimated by both parties. We stand ready to discuss technological parity and revised safety protocols. In his office, Min pored over the data. The slug had passed through the energy shield as if it weren't there. The shield was designed to disrupt energetic states, to heat and diffuse plasma. It simply had no effect on an inert, hypervelocity solid. The math, again, was brutally simple. On Xylos, Counselor Valen received the report. He watched the sensor replay of the Zhu single shot. He saw the shield indicator remain a steady, confident green right up until the moment the hull was breached. He scoffed. A lucky shot against a decrepit barge with a broken shield generator. He declared to his aides. The human projectile struck a weak point in the shield modulation. It is a fluke, a statistic. Their weapon remains a crude tool. This warning changes nothing except to prove their dangerous impulsiveness. He drafted the Council's official response. It censured Earth for excessive force against a civilian vessel and imposed a full trade quarantine. And then, to settle the matter, he proposed a solution that would put these upstart humans in their place for good, a show of force. The Council's first fleet, a gleaming armada of 20 warships, would be dispatched to the edge of the Sol system. They would enforce the quarantine, monitor human activity, and demonstrate, once and for all, the unreachable nature of galactic technology. The message was sent. The first fleet was mobilized. The stage was set, and the Council, looking at the long, simple tube on the Jeju, saw only a primitive pipe. They did not see the bullet that had already been fired. The chamber on Xylos was not built for intimidation, but it achieved it effortlessly through sheer sublime beauty. Sunlight filtered through crystalline arches, casting rainbows on the smooth, organic floor. The air carried a faint, sweet scent. In the center, the members of the Galactic Council's Security Subcommittee sat on floating pedestals, their forms diverse and elegant. Counselor Valen, his blue feathers impeccably groomed, presided. Opposite them, standing on a simple circular platform meant for petitioners, was Ambassador Li. Li was a man who carried his years with a quiet grace. His suit was dark and simple, a stark contrast to the shimmering robes and natural carapaces around him. The large view screen behind Valen was frozen on the final moment of the incident. The schematic of the Far Star Barter, with a clean, cylindrical hole punched through it. The evidence is clear, Valen began, his translated voice smooth and patronizing. An independent commercial vessel, guilty of nothing more than exuberant entrepreneurship, was met with lethal force. Your railgun, he paused, as if the word was distasteful, caused significant damage. This is not the behavior of a species ready for the responsibilities of the wider galaxy. Li waited for the subtle hum of the translation device at his lapel to finish. He did not fidget. Counselor, with respect, the evidence is also clear that the vessel ignored repeated hails, entered protected space, and powered a plasma cutter. Our response was measured and targeted to disable, not destroy. No lives were lost. The primary lesson here is one of technological misunderstanding. Our weapons are kinetic. Your shields, designed for energy-based combat, are not effective against them. We have provided the full physics package. We seek not to assign blame, but to establish a new, realistic framework for safety. A soft, chiming laugh came from another counselor, a willowy being with silver skin. A physics package? How charming. Ambassador, you speak of your projectile as if it is a novel discovery. Kinetic weapons are a childhood phase of civilization. We moved beyond them millennia ago. They are slow, limited by line of sight, and utterly useless against the deflector shields of any modern warship. Li felt a familiar frustration, cold and heavy. They were not listening. They were comparing what they saw to their own past, not evaluating it on its own terms. Our projectiles are not slow, he said, his voice still calm. They travel at a significant fraction of light speed. Your shields work by dispersing energy. A solid tungsten rod possesses kinetic energy, but it is not an energy weapon. It is a physical object. The shield does not stop it any more than a curtain stops a bullet. Valen waved a slender hand. Semantics. A barter was a centuries-old barge. Its shield generator was likely malfunctioning. Our analysis confirms a harmonic fluctuation in its shield frequency at the moment of impact. Your projectile struck during a negligible 1 in a million gap. A fortunate coincidence you mistake for capability. He brought up a new schematic on the screen. It showed a sleek, angular warship, its surfaces glowing with soft blue lines. This is the Light of Xylos, a current generation battlecruiser of the First Fleet. Its multi-phase shields can cycle, frequencies 10,000 times per second. There is no gap. Your lump of metal, should you be foolish enough to launch it, would be vaporized by the shield's dispersal field or intercepted by point defense lasers long before it reached the hull. Lee looked at the glowing ship, a masterpiece of energy manipulation. He thought of the Jeju, all gray steel and magnetic coils. He thought of Jin and her quiet determination. "You are making a critical assumption," Lee said. "You assume we would fire one shot. You assume we cannot fire from multiple vectors, at velocities that make interception mathematically improbable. You are judging a system you have not seen in action." His words hung in the perfumed air. They were, for the first time, a direct challenge. Not a plea for understanding, but a statement of fact. The silver-skinned counselor leaned forward. "Are you threatening this council, Ambassador?" "I am stating a reality you choose to ignore," Lee replied. "We do not want conflict. We want recognition. Dismissing us is no longer safe for anyone." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Valen's feathers ruffled slightly, a sign of agitation. This human was not behaving like a petitioner. He was not awed, he was informing them. It was insufferable. "Your tone is noted," Valen said coldly, "and your reality is a fantasy built on a single anomalous event. The Galactic Council cannot and will not operate on the fears and fantasies of an immature species. Your actions have demonstrated a reckless disregard for galactic law." He tapped a control. A formal decree appeared on the main screen, written in the flowing light script of the Council. "By unanimous vote of this subcommittee, the following measures are enacted. First, a full trade and technology quarantine of the Sol system. No vessel may enter or leave without Council approval. Second, Earth's government is formally censured for the Farstar barter incident. And third," Valen paused, letting his eyes lock with Lee's, "to ensure stability and to provide an educational presence, the First Fleet will be dispatched to the periphery of your system. They will enforce the quarantine and monitor your development. Consider it a gesture of protection and of perspective. You will see true power and understand the depth of your technological infancy." Lee's heart sank. It was the worst possible outcome. Not war, not yet, but a cage guarded by the very power they had hoped to convince. A demonstration meant to humiliate. "Counselor," Lee said, his final plea firm, "do not send your fleet into a demonstration. Send engineers. Send physicists. Come and see what we have built. A dialogue, not a confrontation." "The time for dialogue has passed," Valen said, finality ringing in his voice. "You have spoken with your weapon, Ambassador. Now we will speak with ours. The First Fleet departs within the cycle. Let them watch true technology at work." This session is concluded. The lights on Lee's platform dimmed. The council members began to chatter softly among themselves, already moving on to other business. Lee stood alone in the suddenly immense chamber. The beautiful rainbows danced on the floor around his feet. He had never felt more alien, or more certain of what was to come. He turned and walked slowly towards the exit. His aide, a young man named Tay, fell into step beside him, his face pale. "Sir, what do we tell Earth?" Lee's mind was already racing ahead, past the diplomacy to the inevitable. "We tell them the truth. The Council has chosen not to see. They are sending their finest ships to park on our doorstep and show us how weak we are. And our response? They stepped out of the crystalline chamber into a plain, human-rated corridor. Lee stopped and looked at Tay. Our response was being built in the orbital yards years before I arrived here. We tell Command to ready the Jeju and her sisters. And we tell Commander Yu that her love-fire drills are approved. He allowed himself a thin, grim smile. Since the Council is coming to watch, we should put on a good show. One we will not be able to disregard. A new kind of silence filled the Sol system. It was the silence of held breath. The Galactic Council's first fleet arrived not with a bang, but with a soft, arrogant whisper. One moment, the space beyond Neptune's orbit was empty. The next, 20 sleek, impossible ships shimmered into existence. Their hulls were smooth and white, glowing with faint blue lines of energy. They moved with a silent, graceful power that made every human ship look like a clumsy brick. This was the light of Zelos and its brothers, the pride of 1,000 worlds. From the bridge of the Jeju, hidden behind the icy bulk of Triton, Commander Yu watched them on the long-range scopes. Her face was a mask of calm. Beside her, Day gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles white. "They're beautiful," he whispered, and it wasn't admiration in his voice, but dread. "They're targets," Yu said quietly. "All stations, report readiness." On the engineering deck, Jin's world had shrunk to her console. 12 green lights shone back at her, one for each railgun battery on the Shuju. Across the solar system, 7 other human frigates, with names like Moscow, Ares, and Pacific Shield, hid in similar shadows behind asteroids, in the thin rings of gas giants, on the dark sides of moons. They were smaller, uglier, and utterly invisible to the Council ship's energy-based sensors, which looked for power signatures and engine burns. The human ships were cold and dark, their only warmth a hum of capacitors holding a terrible charge. The message from the first fleet broadcast on all frequencies. It was Counselor Valen's voice, translated, dripping with condescension. "People of Earth, the Galactic Council's first fleet is here to ensure stability and compliance with the quarantine. Your system is under our protection. You will cease all military exercises and recall any vessels beyond your inner planets. Do not test our resolve. We are here to keep the peace." On Earth, in his bunker, Min listened. He wasn't looking at the pretty ships. He was looking at the tactical overlay. His screen showed the neat, arrogant formation of the fleet, a perfect sphere. It showed the locations of the 8 hidden human frigates, little red dots. And it showed the pre-planned firing lanes, calculated over thousands of hours. He opened a channel to Yu. "Pattern Delta is ready. They are holding exactly where we predicted. Their shield envelope is strong, but it's a bubble. They're not moving." On the Jeju, Yu received the data. She took a slow breath. This was the point of no return. They had tried warnings. They had tried data. Now, there was only the language the Council seemed to understand. "All units," she said, her voice clear on the encrypted battlenet. "This is Commander Yu. Execute live fire drill, Pattern Delta. On my mark. Remember your aiming points. Engines, reactors, weapon hubs. We are not here to kill. We are here to demonstrate. Mark. 3, 2, 1. Fire." There was no grand shout, no roaring charge. Across the solar system, 8 ships, hidden in the dark, simply activated a sequence. On the Jeju, the deep, familiar thump vibrated through the deck. Then another and another. The railguns fired in a rapid, rhythmic cadence like a slow, monstrous heartbeat. Jin watched her screens as capacitor banks drained and recharge cycles flashed. Each thump meant another tungsten slug, the size of a man, was now racing through the void at a speed that defied sense. For 10 seconds, nothing happened in the space near Neptune. The first fleet hung in their perfect formation, a monument to galactic power. Then, the light of Xylo shuddered. On its port side, a shower of brilliant sparks erupted from empty space, a point defense, laser vaporizing a projectile at the last possible instant. A millisecond later, 2 more slugs struck its energy shield. The shield flared a blinding, beautiful white where they hit, holding for a single, impossible moment before the projectiles. Their integrity shattered, but their momentum barely slowed. Ripped through as a storm of white-hot fragments. They tore into the hull, shredding elegant architecture, puncturing conduits that spilled glowing plasma into the vacuum. All at once, space around the first fleet became a storm of light and silent death. Human slugs arrived not in a single volley, but in a constant, staggered hailstorm from 8 different directions. The elegant sphere of ships was surrounded. Point defense lasers, designed to track and destroy fast-moving energy signatures, struggled. They hit some, but there were too many. The slugs were too fast, and they came on straight, unerring ballistic paths that required no guidance, no energy signature to lock onto. They were just there. A frigate shaped like a silver dart tried to turn, to bring its main plasma cannons to bear. Before it could complete the maneuver, 3 slugs struck its engine nacelles in quick succession. The engines did not explode. They were simply crushed, ripped open, and left as dead, mangled metal. The ship began to drift, powerless. Panicked voices, untranslated, blared across the open comms the fleet had been using to broadcast its superiority. Shields are ineffective. They are not failing. They are being ignored. My point defense cannot acquire. The projectiles are inert. The Dawn Chorus has lost primary power. We are dead in space. Inside the Jeju, the crew watched in a silence deeper than space. The main viewer showed the carnage. It was not fiery. It was surgical, brutal, and shockingly fast. A cruiser tried to raise its shield frequency, cycling through modulations. A tungsten slug punched through its command spire. Another ship, larger than the rest, glowed as it tried to activate a jump drive to escape. A coordinated salvo from the Ares and the Pacific Shield shattered its delicate jump ring array, leaving it trapped. Commander Yu stared, her calm finally cracking into something like horror. They had proven their point 100 times over. "Cease fire," she ordered, her voice rough. "All units, cease fire." The thumping stopped. The sudden quiet on the BattleNet was deafening. Where the pristine First Fleet had floated, a field of wreckage drifted. Not one ship was destroyed, but every single one was crippled. Hulls were pierced in multiple places. Engine glow had vanished. Weapon ports were mangled or silent. The beautiful blue lines of energy were dark. Twisted metal and frozen gas formed a slow-moving cloud around them. The light of Xylos listed to one side, a gaping, ugly hole visible even from this distance. The galactic chatter on the comms had dissolved into static and weak, dazed calls for help. The language was different, but the meaning was universal. Shock, disbelief, and terror. Day let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "By all that's holy," he murmured. On the engineering deck, Jin looked at her hands. They were steady. She felt nothing but a hollow cold. She had built the gun. She had known the math. But seeing it work, seeing what simple physics did to the galaxy's best, it was not a victory. It was a revelation, and the truth of it was awful. Min's voice came over the net, quiet and solemn. Pattern Delta complete. All primary objectives achieved. Target fleet is combat ineffective. No return fire was observed. No human vessels were engaged. You closed her eyes for a second. Then she opened them, and the commander was back. Begin rescue operations. Launch all shuttles. Medical and engineering teams priority. We will render aid to every ship, human or not. She leaned toward the combs, switching to the broad channel the fleet had used. First Fleet vessels, this is Commander Yu of the Earth Defense Frigate Jeju. We are standing by to provide humanitarian assistance. Please indicate your most critical needs. We are not your enemies. Repeat, we are standing by to assist. The only answer was the hiss of static and the silent, turning wreckage against the stars. The demonstration was over. The message, written in tungsten and kinetic force, had finally been received. The grand chamber on Xylos was no longer a place of beauty. The crystalline arches seemed to hold a different light, cold and accusing. The silence was thick, broken only by the low hum of the main viewer, which replayed the disaster on a loop. The footage was from a surviving drone, the First Fleet, proud and glowing one moment, then shuddering under invisible blows the next. Sparks of point defense fire, the brief, useless flare of shields, and then the slow, pathetic drift of 20 crippled warships. Counselor Valen sat on his pedestal, but he did not preen. His blue feathers were flattened tight against his body. He looked small. The other counselors were a mosaic of shock-rippled skin, dulled bioluminescence, drooping sensory fronds. The human ambassador, Li, stood on the same petitioner's platform. He did not speak. He simply waited, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the screen. When the footage ended, the silence returned, heavier than before. It was Li who broke it, his voice soft but carrying to every corner. The rescue operations continue. Our medical and engineering teams are working alongside your surviving crew. The loss of life was minimal, thanks to the restraint of our targeting computers. Your ships are hulled, but they are not tombs. A counselor with a shell-like carapace shifted, its voice a rasp. Restraint? You call this butchery? Restraint? We call it a measured response to an act of armed intimidation, Li replied, his tone still even. You sent your finest fleet to our doorstep to humiliate us. You gave us no choice but to answer. We chose to answer in a way that proved our point without slaughter. You disregarded every signal, every report. You saw only what you wished to see. Now you see the result. Valen finally found his voice, but it was stripped of its arrogance, thin and frayed. How? The shields? The physics. The physics were in the reports you marked resolved, Li said. A shield designed to diffuse energy is a curtain to a bullet. Your point defense is designed to track the energy signature of a missile or the glow of a plasma bolt. Our projectiles are cold, inert, and moving too fast for reliable interception. It is not magic. It is a simple, brutal application of force. You forgot that simplicity is not weakness. He gestured to the screen, now frozen on the image of the light of Xylos, a dark hole glaring from inside. You came to show us true technology. You succeeded. You showed us that technology, when it becomes an article of faith, blinds its user. You were so busy looking at the glow of your own shields. You never saw the gun aimed at you. Asterisk, 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 near Jupiter. The shuttles flew in a steady stream between the human frigates and the wounded leviathans of the First Fleet. Inside one of these shuttles, Sue worked with a focused calm. She was a medic, her uniform simple, her kit full of basic human and adapted alien supplies. Her shuttle docked with a mangled airlock on a ship called the Star's Grace. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of ozone and something sweetly alien blood. The corridors were dark, lit only by emergency strips. Elegant walls were scarred and bent. A Xylosian crewman, its leg trapped under a fallen support beam, chirped in pain and fear. Sue didn't flinch. She motioned to her 2 human engineers. "Get the cutter, gently." She knelt beside the alien, her movements slow and clear. She injected a universal painkiller from her kit. "Help is here," she said, knowing it wouldn't understand the words, but hoping it would understand the tone. Her helmet camera, broadcasting the scene back to Earth and, intentionally, to Xylos, showed her careful hands, her expression of professional compassion. The engineers freed the leg. Sue splinted it. The Xylosian's large, dark eyes watched her, the fear slowly fading into exhausted confusion. This was not the behavior of a savage, primitive species. This was the behavior of a people who had won, and chose not to crush their defeated enemy, but to mend them. On the bridge of the Jesu, Commander Yu monitored all the feeds. She saw Sue's work. She saw human engineers in exosuits helping to patch hull breaches on alien ships, sharing power cells to keep life support running. She saw a human sailor giving his water ration to a trembling insectoid navigator. These images were the second volley, more powerful than the first. Asterisk, 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 back in the council chamber, the debate was not about retaliation. That word had died in the first minutes of the replay. The debate was about survival, and about a terrifying shift in the galactic order. They could have destroyed the entire fleet. The silver-skinned counselor exclaimed, its voice trembling. They held back. Why? Because they are not monsters, a new voice said, an older reptilian counselor from a pragmatic species. They are strategists. They have demonstrated not just power, but control. They have shown they can dismantle our primary defense doctrine. Every shield in the galaxy is now obsolete against them. And then they show mercy. It is a devastating combination. All eyes turned back to Lee. He finally unfolded his hands. Humanity has not sought to rule the council. We do not seek war. We sought only a seat at this table, and you gave us a blockade instead. You forced this demonstration. The tragedy is that it did not have to happen. He took a step forward, his gaze sweeping the room. You have a choice now. You can cling to your shattered pride, call us enemies, and force us to become the destroyers you fear. Or you can accept the new reality. Our technology is different. It is valid. It changes the balance. We are here. We are not going away. Valen seemed to shrink further. The truth was a physical weight on him. His entire worldview, the superiority of energy-based civilization, the benign guidance of the council lay in ruins, pierced by simple tungsten. What do you propose? He asked, the words barely a whisper. A seat on this council, Lee said. Full membership. An immediate end to the quarantine. A joint commission to study the integration of kinetic and energy-based defense systems. We have much to learn from each other. You have science and beauty we can only dream of. And we have a reminder. A reminder that the universe operates on physical laws, not just elegant theories. The vote was called. It was not unanimous, but it was swift. Fear and a grudging, awe-struck respect carried the day. The motion passed. Humanity was in. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk later, on the repaired but quiet bridge of the Jeju, Jin, Min, and Day stood together, looking at the main viewer. It showed Jupiter's great storm, and drifting near it, the scarred hulks of the First Fleet, now under tow by their own recovery vessels. The shared rescue operation was winding down. It's over? Day asked, his voice hollow. This part is, Min said, adjusting his glasses. The next part begins. The politics. The integration. The fear. Jin shook her head, staring at her own reflection in the dark screen. It's not over. We just changed the question. They asked, what can you do? Now they have to ask, what will you do? They stood in silence for a long time. There was no celebration. The cost of their victory was the galaxy's innocence and their own. They had proven that a simple idea, launched with enough force, could break a complex and arrogant system. The message finally had been received, but the echoes of that deep, thumping sound would reverberate through the stars forever. They had not just won a battle. They had changed the rules of the game, and the responsibility of that lay upon them, heavy and silent as a railgun slug waiting in its chamber.